Hi guys, we are going to discuss two great topics today. So the first one is cholesterol and the other is sugar intake. So first little lesson is a little bit science heavy, but bear with me. So cholesterol is the fatty substance that is found in your blood. And everyone has cholesterol and we need it to stay healthy. So every cell in our body actually uses cholesterol, and we get some of this cholesterol from the food that we eat. So the main two different types of cholesterol, which you may have heard, is HDL, also called high density lipoproteins. But HDL is the good cholesterol. And this is because it gets rid of the bad cholesterol from your blood, which is the LDL. So it takes the cholesterol that you don't need back to the liver, and then the liver breaks it down so it can be passed out of your body. So high cholesterol is when you have too much cholesterol in your blood. And this is when we typically see increases in risk of heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. So knowing that HDL is good for us and we need it, that's where LDL comes in. And this is probably what people are more focused on and worried about. And so LDL also classed as the bad cholesterol. This is because if there's too much of it, it can build up inside the walls of the blood vessels, and this clogs them, and that causes the arteries to narrow, which means that we increase our risk of heart attack or stroke because the blood can't flow through it, which is kind of in this diagram here. Now, another thing to be mindful of is triglycerides. So for those who've ever had their cholesterol triglycerides tested, our blood also contains types of fat called triglycerides. So triglycerides are just like the scientific word for fat, and this is stored in the body's fat cells. So being overweight or eating a lot of fatty or sugary foods, or even just drinking too much alcohol, can make you more likely to have high triglyceride level. And triglycerides can also contribute to the narrowing of the artery walls that we've just discussed, which again increases your risk in these diseases. And you may see it in your cholesterol reading results, and the doctor will be able to tell you if it's too high. But you can actually have normal levels of HDL and LDL cholesterol, but still have a high triglyceride level. So they're both kind of indicators or health markers, shall we say. So I guess what causes it? And the things that you can't control are aging and genetics. So we have this sex difference between male and female. And as we get older, we do tend to naturally have an increase. And the good HDL is unaffected by aging in men, and it actually rises in women. So if anything, men don't need to worry too much. You're still going to have this good level of HDL. And for women, interestingly, we have an increase. But we also do have an increase in the LDL. And this is obviously the bad cholesterol, and it rises as we get older. This is actually because our body's LDL receptors, which are meant to remove the LDL cholesterol from the blood, become less active over time. So therefore we can accumulate more in the body. So men over 45 and women over 55 should have their cholesterol checked every 2 to 3 years. And we also see that women in menopause also have an additional risk as they reach menopause. And that usually happens. So it's pretty normal. Because obviously, now I've gone through both of them, you do naturally have both levels in the blood, and having some levels of LDL is not bad. It's just exceeding them. So the things that you can control to help prevent this increase in cholesterol would be not eating too much saturated fat, which I will go into in the next slide. Not being active enough. So making sure you exercise, make sure you're doing resistance training, weight training, because we know that having muscle mass is one of the best health markers for yourself and a really good indicator. It also improves your bone density and overall health. So not to be underestimated. So also having too much body fat, especially around your middle, can also be a factor. So if we can, do more exercise and make sure we're eating the right types of food, then we're going to be putting ourselves in a better position. And of course, smoking also does cause a buildup of tar. And what happens is this makes it easier for the cholesterol to stick onto your arteries. So hope that all kind of makes sense. I'll just talk through the different foods. So HDL foods are things like oatmeal, olive oil, apples, fatty fish, so like salmon, mackerel, sardines, your avocado, berries, walnuts. So just to reiterate, beans and legumes are lentils, black beans, chickpeas, butter beans. And we should all be trying to include these in our diet anyway, because they're also a good way to increase our fiber content. And the more fiber we have and focus in our diet, the healthier we are going to be. And one of the best, most nutritional foods that you can eat is actually oatmeal, so oats. So they're loaded with fiber, and they actually help keep bad cholesterol from being absorbed into your bloodstream, which is amazing. And of course, your walnuts. These aren't the only foods. Obviously, there's some other ones. But yeah. So then you've got your LDL foods, which are basically saturated fats. So that would be your meat, your butter, your cheese, and other really full fat dairy products. They raise your total cholesterol, right? So by decreasing your consumption of saturated fats to less than 7% of your total daily calorie intake, you can reduce your LDL cholesterol by about 8 to 10%. And that's not to say that we shouldn't ever not eat these foods. Obviously, we all need to have and live our lives, but you can just choose better options. So when it comes to like pastries and cakes and stuff, if you can, maybe go for like the home baked ones instead. Or if you're going to have like a steak, make sure it's not the fattiest steak. But again, you want to just have this in moderation, and we should be reducing this intake. So this shouldn't be in our everyday life. Same with chips and crackers. Coconut and palm oil, I would 100% remove from your diet at all costs. So check on the back of labels, make sure they don't contain coconut or palm oil. We know that these are really high in saturated fat, and there was that trend for a while with the coconut oil being the best oil to cook with, and actually it's quite the opposite. So we want to be cooking with rapeseed oil, also known as canola oil, how you say it, or extra virgin olive oil. And if that's going at a high temperature, that's the best option. If you're going to dress salads or food, then you'd want to get always a extra virgin olive oil with like maybe cold pressed if you want to be really, really picky about it. It also tastes nicer too. Once you have good olive oil, you'll never go back. Okay, so sugar intake, quite a confusing one. A lot of stuff out there that is very misleading. And I think sugar has been regarded as the enemy, but actually in truth, it's not all bad. And in fact, sugar gives us energy. And we have sugar, it comes in a lot of different foods. So I think the main thing to discuss here really is the difference between types of sugar, and I guess more so the form you find it in, right? So the right quantities and in the right form is essential. So foods containing natural levels of sugar, i.e. fruits, dairy, are good sources, and they contain other nutrients and provide us with energy. So if we're going to consume, for example, and I've got a diagram to show you in a bit, but if we're going to consume sugar from a fruit, say, or there's obviously sugar in like cereals and bread and milk, we are also metabolizing and absorbing other nutrients from that. And by doing that, we actually prevent the sugar spike. And this is why one of the best ways to consume your sugar is to have it alongside either a fiber source or a fat source, because it blunts the sugar spike and means that we are more likely to absorb and use the sugar as energy rather than just storing it. So when it comes to like free sugars, this also means added sugars. And so they are any form of added sugar. They are any form of product during the production which has basically added sugar. So this could be a spoonful of honey in like your herbal tea sachet, or this could be some sugar added to your oat bar during production. So it's not natural, it's been added. It doesn't come naturally in the form. And this also happens with orange juice too, okay? But I'll go into that in a sec. So these types of free sugars have absolutely no nutritional benefit, and we don't want to be having them too much, because this is the kind of sugar that makes us gain weight. It's also very palatable, so it makes us want to eat it more. And we also know that it releases the serotonin and dopamine hormones. So yeah, that's why we want to eat so much of it, because it's tasty and it triggers some sort of receptor in our brain which makes us want to eat more. So where are we? So with your free sugars, then we don't want to have any more than 5% of the energy calories that you get from food and drink each day. So how that looks is here. I've got adults should have no more than 30 grams of free sugars a day, which is roughly equivalent to 7 sugar cubes. So these are just alternatives. I don't know how you measure. Children, obviously, no more than 24. And children aged 4 to 6, no more than 19 free sugars. So I guess this kind of calls for people to make sure they're looking on the back of food labels. So normally you'll have, like, on the back it will say of total sugars. That basically means the combination of natural and free sugars. So free sugars is also added sugars. So you also really, really, really want to avoid HFCS, which is high fructose corn syrup. It's huge in the States. It's pretty much in all the packaged food. We're a lot stricter with it here, but it still does slip through the net, and we do have it in some products. It's normally in the back of a packet, which has about 1,000 ingredients that we can't recognize. And I think that's one of your indicators as well, is if you're looking at the back of something and on that label, if sugar is between 30 grams, from 24 to 30 grams, you've literally used your entire sugar for the whole of the day. So we also want to think about how we're consuming that too. So I thought this was quite nice because it does really demonstrate the difference of when we eat foods as a whole food versus a processed and ultra processed, I guess. So if you see here, if you had an orange, it's gonna be much more filling and satisfying because you have this larger amount of fiber content. Now, this is because it's got the pulse and the peel, which actually adds the texture of the orange. So when you're eating that, you're getting fiber plus 12.3 grams of sugar. So that's for one orange. Now, if you go for an orange juice, you've got, for 500 milliliters, that's probably around 4 oranges. You now have 0.2 grams of fiber and 44 grams of sugar. So it really makes us think, because when companies make orange juice, yes, they use oranges, but they also add sugar into it to preserve the shelf life. And it is gone through a process which removes any of the fiber. So there's no pulps, there's no pips, there's no skin, it's not fresh. So something to be really mindful of when we think that we're having orange juice as a healthy option. We want to be eating our sugars from fruits, and again, we want to be eating them, not liquidizing them. So, and then you can see here with the Coca-Cola bottle, can, sorry, you've got no fiber and you've got 30 grams of sugar, which is crazy. And you've basically drank that in one day. So I guess the take homes are, if you're trying to reduce your sugar intake and you're someone who has a really, really sweet tooth, then it is good to opt for sweetened artificial sweeteners, so like Coke Zero or Diet Coke. But this should be a process of allowing you to wean yourself off it. Okay, so it's not an excuse to have it every single day, because there's no research that shows that artificial sweeteners are damaging, but we are unsure whether that has an impact on the gut microbiome. And I think if you're using it as an alternative, absolutely fine, but it shouldn't be in our daily food intake. Also, go for sugary foods. If you like sugary foods, go for alternatives. So things with less sugar. Use maple syrup, molasses, or honey. They're more natural forms. And also watch out for condiments like ketchup. So I think ketchup has, per 100 grams of ketchup, there's like 23 grams of sugar in there. So it's not that sugar is the enemy or the devil. We need them, but we just need to be mindful that they fit in and we're not exceeding them. And if you're someone who really doesn't know where you are on your daily sugar intake, I would start to track to see where and how much you are consuming, and then use that as a guide to improve it overall. So yeah. Any questions, please let me know. Ping them across to Jack. And yeah, I hope to answer them. And have a great day, guys.